Okay, this is a short screencast about redirection in the shell for Ruby scripts. We're going to use the basic input, process, output model. This is just for shell scripts written in Ruby that want to take data from one place and process it and output it someplace else. Okay? Now the most common way that this happens is we get our data from the keyboard and we output it to the display. And you've done this already in your classwork. You use a getS method so that if someone types at the keyboard you can bring that string in. You use a putS method to take a string and output it to the terminal display. Again, we're just talking about text here, streams of text coming in and out. Well, wouldn't it be cool, wouldn't it be amazing if you could do the same thing just as easily with files? Well, of course you can, or else I wouldn't be doing this screencast. Let's take a look at how this works. This is such a common situation that the shell and the operating system provide a standard input and a standard output that you get for free. They're abbreviated standard in and standard out. There's also a standard error, but we won't deal with that in this quick introduction. Standard in and standard out are what's called I/O streams. I/O streams are just data in motion, bytes one after another, words one after another. Like you saw, these could be characters coming into the process from the keyboard, or it could be characters going out to the display. The Ruby language gives you an I/O class as part of the standard library. The I/O class allows you to deal with these streams. getS and putS are methods in the I/O class. I/O streams are an abstract concept that will also pull data from files or from network sockets, from other processes. Anytime there's data in motion, you can use the I/O library to access them. So if we could somehow substitute a file for the keyboard, we could use getS and putS, use standard in and standard out to do it. Well, let's see how that happens. Basically, you take a file and you tell the operating system, connect standard in using redirection. That way, if you have a string called foo in your text file, you can use getS just like you could with the keyboard to get that string. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. The actual details of making that happen are pretty simple. It's just one character. So let's say we have a Ruby script and we want to run it in Ruby. We just, at the command prompt, we type ruby script.rb and it hands the script to the Ruby interpreter and it runs it. This is happening in a shell, bash or ZSH or even some of the older ones if you like, but bash is pretty common now. If you want to connect that file to standard in, you tell the shell, redirect from this file, let's call it file.txt, and you do that with this simple syntax. You just use this little angle bracket that says, in fact you can kind of see it happening, take the file.txt data and cram it into the script.rb script. Standard out works the same way. Simple characters, but it goes in the other direction. Pretty simple, eh? It's just this angle bracket, again, that takes standard out and redirects it into a file. So let's put it all together with one simple example. We've got a process that copies from standard in to standard out. It reads a string, it reads a line, it puts the line out. Okay? We want to take it a little step further and we want to actually copy files. So we want to read a file to standard in, and when we output each line to standard out, we want to put it in another file. This way, something that copies strings, copies lines, can copy entire files, and we don't have to change our code at all. Let's call it, copy.rb, and it looks something like this. While getS is still giving us data, until we get that end of file mark, let's just output that data. And when we hit end of file, we'll stop. To invoke this script, read from one file and output to the other file, use our two redirect symbols. Take src.txt and give it to standard in, take standard out and give it to dst.txt. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay, so how do we test something like this? Well, we basically need 3 steps. We need to create that first file. We need to run the copy script using redirection in the shell. And then we need to compare whatever we get out to what we put in. And if it truly copies things, they should be the same. Let's use a vaguely, RSpec kind of syntax here. Put it in an it block and say, well, it should copy files. We'll use some method to create the source file, and we'll assume that we're going to call it src.txt. In the code challenges, you'll see that we create these files with an explicit pattern of data so that we can verify that the transformation process, that the processing is operating the way that it's supposed to. In this situation, we're just copying the file, so we really don't care what's in it, as long as it can be read like a string. Then, the interesting thing is, how do we hand a command to the shell script so we can use redirection? We use something called this backtick notation. The backtick is single quotes that go the other way. These are in the upper left-hand corner of most keyboards. The backtick notation says, take this string, hand it to a shell process, and collect the output, and I'll wait while you go ahead and do that. There's other ways of running shell processes that allow you to fork one off and let it go, allow you to do other things with it. It's a pretty rich language that way. It borrows from Perl in this sense. Makes it real easy to write glue code that hooks together other applications. Well, anyway, after we're done writing that, presumably we've got a destination file. So all we have to do then is we need to verify that the source is equal to the destination. So again, we use the IOStream class library, the IO class library, and we use the read method. The read method just takes the file you give it, or the stream you give it, and returns the contents. So our assertion simply says that when we look at the contents of the dst.txt file, they should be equal to the contents of the source file. And if that's true, then the test passes. And when we can get this test to pass, then we know we've written the copy file correctly. So, let's summarize. Every process that you run from the shell has a standard I/O streams provided automatically by the shell. Standard in, standard out, and something called standard error, which we didn't talk about today. The shell can connect these to files using a process called redirection, with the little angle brackets, left and right angle brackets. The Ruby I/O class lets you interact with these streams and not only get data from devices like keyboards or displays, but also to get data from files, from other processes, whether they're on the current machine or they're connected to you by a network. Okay, that's redirection for doing simple input and output with Ruby. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, thanks for thinking. Talk to you later.